You're listening to the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. It's fast, fun, free, daily deep dive Bible, and right now we're working on the book of Nehemiah. If you're new, welcome. You can jump in right here, or you can always go back and start at the beginning of any season. The whole podcast is available in an easy-to-use format at thetmbh.com.
All right, this is going to get personal and weird, and we're just going to do it because we do things like this from time to time. I want you to picture the things you don't like in life or that you haven't liked in life. It can be a trend in art or culture, something that rubs you the wrong way. It can be an enemy or a rival that you had at work or in school or on a team or whatever. But let's go to the dark place for just a second and think about stuff that you don't like. Now let's think about this. Don't say it out loud. Why don't you like it? Really? Honestly? Why not? Okay, probably some of your answer for some of this is because the thing is bad. It's bad for other people. It's bad for me. It's not just. It's not good. And you've got some sort of clear moral standing, some sort of clear moral narrative for why it's not a good thing and you should be opposed to it, and it is virtuous to be opposed to it. Yeah, right on. That's righteous anger. I mean, that makes perfect sense. It's a good thing to feel moral opposition to things that are not good. But I'm guessing that if we sit and think about it a little longer, things will also come to mind where it's like, certain things that we might find off-putting, even silly little trite things that probably shouldn't matter to us, but somehow deep down do. Maybe we feel a little guilty about that. And maybe we realize there's no good reason for me to dislike that. I can work up a narrative in my brain for why I didn't like that you did that, or I don't like the way that movie or this style is working, whatever. Maybe we can craft some kind of narrative, but deep down we know it's not really a great narrative. And it's really more about our own insecurity and grouchiness than it is about anybody else doing anything wrong. But the point is, if you don't like something, just based on my interactions with so many of you, I believe that you are so highly competent that there is a reason that you don't like it, and you could articulate that reason if called upon to do so, even if the reason might occasionally be embarrassing and you then needed to immediately say, I shouldn't find that off-putting, but that's my stupid narrative, and that's why I do, and I'm working on it. Okay, whatever, cool. Everybody doesn't like something, but almost everybody has a reason for why they don't like it. So when we start looking at this Sanballat character and discover that he doesn't like Jews, oh wow, we're talking about straight up racism, it looks like. I refuse to believe that there's no narrative. Now, just because there's a narrative doesn't mean it's right. I think his narrative is wrong. But you know what? Dang it. I'm curious. What the heck is going on in this guy's head that he wants to oppose something that seems like it's a good thing for other people? Here's what I'm talking about. Sanballat, he only comes up 2 times in Nehemiah chapter 2, but it's clear he's going to be a problem. Nehemiah 2:10, this is Nehemiah's memoirs, so it's Nehemiah talking. When Sanballat, the Horonite, and Tobiah, the Ammonite official, heard about this, they were very much disturbed that someone had come to promote the welfare of the Israelites. Dang. So they're just mad something good is going to happen for someone else. They're just mad that a leader has stepped up and now the people are pulling together. Okay, well, let's see if we can get to the bottom of this a little bit more by looking at this next passage about Sanballat, which is in verse 19 of Nehemiah chapter 2. This is still from Nehemiah's point of view. But when Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you're doing, they asked. Are you rebelling against the king? You know what? I still don't feel like I've got a very good sense of it here. I know what their actions are. Their actions are to oppose the returning exiles, to oppose the Jewish people at every turn. I know what their tactic is. Accuse and see if you can undermine this sense of unity by getting a percentage of the people who have become unified behind the idea of rebuilding the walls and the gate. See if you can just do a despair campaign publicly to get 10%, 20%, 30% even, to say, oh, wait, yeah, this might be rebellion, this is bad. And then there's a thought contagion effect from there. You don't need to convince that many people if you're Sanballat. You get really 5% of people to be like, Mom, Dad, I just can't go there with you. I'm sorry, Uncle, I can't do this. Hey, I'm sorry, kiddos. I know you believe in the rebuilding of this thing, but your mom and I, we can't go along with you on this. And if you love us, you'll understand and accept that. And then all of a sudden, family is leveraged against family. Paralysis happens as nobody is able to accomplish anything. Despair and division campaigns work. These are competent enemies. Good job, Sanballat. But I still don't get why. Why don't you want them to succeed? Why don't you like the Jews? Well, I've been telling you that Sanballat is somebody who comes up extra biblically. And I think we get some pretty good clues when we go and look at those sources. Maybe the original audience would have just known this stuff because maybe the name Sanballat was generationally famous in its association with a certain people group we'll talk about in a minute. Maybe the original audience did not know this. I don't have clarity on that yet, but here's some stuff that I have found. Sanballat gets mentioned 500 years after his lifetime, after the events of Nehemiah and Ezra, by the Jewish historian Josephus, who was writing during the time of the Roman destruction of the temple, the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in the latter part of the 1st century AD. But Josephus famously has some really big historical timeline problems when he writes about stuff that happened during the reign of Xerxes and Artaxerxes and their descendants. He seems to confuse Darius the First, Second, and Third. He seems to flip-flop Xerxes and Artaxerxes, and it's really disorienting when you go and read his book, The Antiquities of the Jews, and you get into Book 11, chapters 7 and 8, because nothing is where it ought to be. He makes cardinal errors like saying in the 26th year of the reign of Xerxes, Nehemiah did such and such. Well, wait a minute. Xerxes only reigned 21 years. You're clearly talking about Artaxerxes from your timeline, but you got the names all wrong. What's going on? And quickly, I got to take you down this road for like, what do you do when you're trying to sort that out and you're me or you're you and you want to do this work for yourself? I have found a lot of advantage in going and looking at old archives of old academic articles from before the current fights that we have right now. The current fights at times compromise the reliability of academics, even scientific studies. Now, I'm one who tends to believe in the virtue of the people who put in the work to do the homework. And as long as their work is transparent and they're not threatened by you picking at it and looking at it, that's a great academic process. I don't think we're at an all-time high in terms of reliability in those processes right now. I think everything is politicized, and sometimes our biases can cause us to fudge when we publish results and not even know we're doing it. I think there were biases 150 years ago as well, but it was a different era. And at this time, there's all this new stuff getting unearthed in the desert. And so people are digging it up and they're like, we just got to reconcile it all and figure out how it all works. And there isn't really anything to be gained or lost by coming to this conclusion or whatever. It seems like in the second half of the 1800s, early 1900s, there was quite the impulse toward just get me to the truth. How did Josephus make this mistake? So I went and I read some old articles from people who frankly are from institutions skeptical of the reliability of Scripture. Like, for example, Union Theological Seminary. I read an article from, when is this? The 1920s maybe, by a guy named Julius Boer, who I believe was from Union Theological. I don't know, I think that's right. Well, he's not threatened at all by Josephus's mistakes. He's like, no, you can just figure it out right here. These are the linguistic errors that Josephus made. You can see how he made the mistakes. You can retrace his steps. And if you just decode his mistakes, then his account becomes useful to us again. Very, very helpful. There is a dude from the University of Chicago who I was reading named C.G. Tooland, who wrote more than 100 years ago as well. And he did a great job of breaking down the sources that Josephus had to work with and what the Greek texts available to him, the versions of those sources would have looked like. And he's like, look, right here. This is exactly how the mistake was made and why he got confused on this point. It was very, very helpful. And all of that was enough to make me say that it was probably worth bringing to you Josephus's references to Sanballat, even though I have to acknowledge that in the raw form, Josephus's book has clear problems that everybody sees. So in the Antiquities of the Jews, Book 11, Section 302, we get this. Now there was one Sanballat who was sent by Darius, the last king of Persia, into Samaria. Okay, well, again, we got confusion here on the timeline, but Sanballat, well, what do we know about this Sanballat? We move ahead to section 310. Josephus says, Sanballat also told him further, doesn't matter who he was, that Sanballat would build him a temple like that at Jerusalem upon Mount Gerizim, which is the highest of all the mountains that are in Samaria. Aha, my friends, we are getting somewhere. So Sanballat, according to Josephus and Josephus's sources, is a Samaritan. And that's nice and that's interesting, but what about the other extra-biblical mention of Sanballat? Can we confirm this Samaritan thing? Well, we go and read those Egyptian elephantine papyri that were written exactly during the time we're looking at here in Nehemiah, during Sanballat's lifetime, and they indeed confirm that Sanballat was the governor of Samaria. Aha! Now it's coming into focus. The Jews, then, to Sanballat, are not just some random other people group who Sanballat as a low-functioning intellectual idiot and moral idiot in all the most literal senses of the term idiot, who Sanballat just hates because he's so dumb and low-functioning that just randomly, Sanballat hate other group there, not like you, you fine, you bad, no reason for Sanballat, me just decide, me hate you. No, it's not like that. It's a sophisticated hate that comes with a narrative that has been built over generations. Sanballat has inherited that narrative, and I think as we're going to see tomorrow, Sanballat might be his people's Ezra, Nehemiah, and Zerubbabel all rolled into one, and the advancement of the Jewish cause is the not advancement of Sanballat's rival Samaritan cause. And again, maybe the original audience knew all of this about Sanballat and his family and where he was from before they even cracked open the book of Nehemiah. Maybe they would figure it out, as we'll see as they read further along in Nehemiah. But for you and I, the villain is getting humanized a little bit here, and I think he becomes more dangerous as we discover he's not just a low-functioning fool who randomly hates somebody for no reason. How much damage can such a fool do? No, instead, this is a sophisticated hatred, a sophisticated rivalry born out of something much, much deeper, something that looks more like yours or my most sophisticated disdain for something we've encountered in life that is maybe undergirded by a dangerous, flawed narrative that we might harbor. The plot thickens. I'm Matt. This is a 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.